Welcome, everybody, to the Fox 17 Nashville Mayoral Town Hall tonight. We are so happy to have you with us. We are here at Trevecca Nazarene University, and during the next hour, we will hear from all 7 candidates who are running for Nashville mayor.
And we have Metro Council member Megan Berry, attorney and businessman Charles Robert Bone, former chairman of the Metro Public School Board David Fox, former director of development for MDHA and real estate developer Bill Freeman, Davidson County Criminal Court Clerk and former Nashville Vice Mayor Howard Gentry, founder and former CEO of Lead Academy Jeremy Kane, and Nashville businesswoman Linda Eskind Rebrovick. Now, right now, we want to go over a few of the ground rules for what we're doing here tonight. First of all, the candidates will each have 1 minute to respond to each question. They've been apprised of all this. We do have a person who's keeping time right down here in the middle, and when you get close to your time being over, you'll see the lights and also some placards that'll tell you the time's almost up. And for the audience both here in the studio and at home, we want you to understand that the candidates were positioned tonight randomly. It was the random seating selection.
Being as fair as we possibly can with this. Also, the candidates each have 1 30-second rebuttal. Think of it kind of like a chip. You have one opportunity to play it. If you don't play it, you lose it, but you certainly want to play it wisely. So during this hour debate, you have one chance to use your rebuttal. Also, we talked to the audience tonight. You have 2 times to clap, 2 hold times. One of those is right now, and the other is at the end of the form. So let's clap and get it out of the way.
Get a good one in.
And that really is so that we have more time to fit in more questions so that we can get more information out to voters, which I know is in the best interest of all of us tonight. All right, let's get started. We want to start tonight with Fox 17's Green Mile investigation. It uncovered a pattern of police officers accused of wrongdoing sitting in the police lobby for months at a time, in some cases more than a year, while their case was investigated. Are you comfortable with that policy, first of all? And if not, would you direct Chief Steve Anderson to alter or abandon this practice since, of course, the mayor is the only person to whom the chief is accountable? Let's start tonight with Ms. Berry.
Thank you for having us. When we talk about the Green Mile, I remember my own professional experience. I'm a corporate ethics and compliance officer, and I understand how important it is to have due process. I believe our police officers deserve due process. I think Chief Anderson has done an amazing job, but I also want to make sure that our police officers who put their lives on the line every day have the resources that they need. You know, since we've been in office since 2007, our crime is down 28%. And we put 2 new precincts online, and we fully funded our police. But that still means that our police officers need more access to resources. And I believe that we can do that by helping them have body cameras. Body cameras will record what happens, so we know what the honest police officers are doing, and we know what a few bad apples are doing. That will speed up due process.
I think it's in the best interest for everyone to have a fair and open and transparent process, and it's in all of our best interest as a city to have our police officers out on the street. As a former CEO, I understand that when a complaint is logged, that you want to do it quickly but fairly for all involved. With the Green Mile, it's not fair for folks to sit there and slow the process down. We could be having these folks, as long as the case is not involving kids or not involving too dangerous of a situation, be painting walls out at the police academy, being put to work. When the police officers I've spoken with, they want to get back on the job quickly. They want to be investigated quickly. As mayor, I would partner with our police chief and Police Anderson to make sure that it is a fair, open, and transparent process for the citizens of Nashville, but also all of our police officers as well.
Mr. Fox?
As a former journalist, I have a lot of regard for the investigative work that Fox 17 did on that report, so congratulations on that. Certainly in the public interest to look after that. My conclusion is that I still have quite a bit of confidence in Chief Anderson. I understand we need to be very vigilant on issues. We want to take our time. We don't want to overly rush things. Due process for all of our public workers is critically important. So I'm by and large comfortable with the process they've laid out. Still, public scrutiny is good, and it doesn't matter which public entity we're talking about. We all end up performing better with that sort of scrutiny. So I appreciate the media's interest. I think Chief Anderson will improve the process, but I'll want to conclude by saying I still have a great deal of confidence in Chief Anderson's leadership and the effectiveness of our police force.
Mr. Gentry.
Yes, I had been asked that question earlier. Matter of fact, I think I'm the only candidate that went on camera with that. It's a tough question. I'm the criminal court clerk, and what I do know in our courts is when someone is convicted or someone is accused, not convicted, sometimes a court case can go for years, sometimes it can go for months, sometimes it's a shorter period. Well, when a police officer has a circumstance within the police department and is accused, that can take time too. You don't want to see anyone sitting around doing nothing, and it would be great if we could find something constructive for those officers to do. But it's more to it than just people sitting in the hallway with nothing to do. There are a lot of circumstances involved, and I'm not going to judge the police chief, the man that we say such great things about, for this particular situation. Let's hope that he knows what he's doing.
Well, certainly I have a lot of respect for Chief Anderson and the entire police department. I think we have the finest police department today that we've had at any point in Nashville's history. You're beginning to see that not just with results from crime statistics, but also the way they interact with most of the community. Having said that, as a lawyer, certainly I can understand some of the complexities when you do afford someone due process, and certainly some of that delay could be happening on both sides of the appeals that they're going through. But I guess my concerns that the investigation brought to light really are twofold. One is I think we ought to do everything we can to expedite the process and to shorten the time period in which it's taken to make some of these decisions. And two, based on my understanding, it looks like there'd be something more appropriate for these folks to do than just sit in the hallway or sit in the lobby. I think there's probably a better way to handle that.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Mr. Freeman.
I'm a big fan of our police department. I think they do a tremendous job in our community. We should be very proud of what each and every one of them do. If I'm elected mayor, there will be no Green Mile. We will abolish that disciplinary procedure and that process day one. We will not have the Green Mile. I'll have that conversation with the chief. He'll understand it. I'll have that conversation in simple English, and he will understand that that's not how we will discipline our police officers going forward. So I'm against that 100%.
Ms. Rebrovick.
Yeah, my background, 39 years in business at senior level positions and as a CEO managing thousands and thousands of employees, have told me the most important thing we need to do is make sure that we have good performance goals. We need to make sure that we have a sound process to guide all of our employees and all of the police in their day-to-day work, which is so difficult and is so important to keep us safe. And I want to make sure that we provide the development that they need to do their job well. And so, as we have situations that come up, which they always do, around performance, what we need to be doing is providing more development, more training, making sure they are learning how to get back on the job quickly as we're evaluating the situation as fast as possible so that they can be productive. Thank you.
Thank you all. Do any of you want to use your rebuttal?
All right, with that said, let's wade into question number 2, which deals with transportation. You knew something like that was coming. The AMP clearly is dead. What will you do to address Nashville's need for a meaningful mass transit solution? And perhaps more importantly, how do you pay for it? And Mr. Kane, you have the first bite at the apple.
Great question, and I think the answer has to be we can't just focus on transit as a simple bus solution or a bike solution or a light rail solution. It's an all of the above solution. And I look at it from my background in education, and there's a story that I always tell of a parent who had to withdraw her students from Lead Academy because she got a better job, was able to get her first apartment and moved to Antioch, but couldn't transport her kids across town anymore. When we think about how we pay for this transit system and how we build a truly comprehensive system, it involves our school system. It involves our businesses. That's why I called for the incentive package with Bridgestone to have an MTA component to it, just like Vanderbilt does with subsidizing its employees. Because when we look at transit, it's connected to our jobs, it's connected to our schools, and it's connected to our neighborhoods. I believe we also need to start thinking regionally within Davidson County so you don't have to come downtown to transfer.
Mr. Fox?
We've knocked on 36,000 doors so far in my campaign. And we always ask, what's the most important issue on your mind when it comes to Nashville? The first issue is still public education, and a very close second is transportation. It's vital that we take care of this issue because, as most of us recognize, quality of life is being put in jeopardy here. We can take care of it, but we need to move urgently to address it. So I've been looking at what can we do in the private sector, especially for the commuter piece. As you know, we have a lot more debt on our books, so to the extent that we can have the private sector shoulder some of this burden, that would be a very good opportunity. So trying to see what in the railroad lines can we use for commuter transportation. That's a conversation we need to keep on pushing forward. But secondly, let's take advantage of the urgency that's all over the city now. Everybody, it doesn't matter where I'm knocking doors, everyone knows we've got to get this right. So let's pull together a transparent, inclusive process, get everybody on the same team, and then we can work together and get a very effective and very affordable transportation approach.
Mr. Gentry.
Since I served on the council as councilman at large and then vice mayor, the transit discussion has taken place almost every year. And we have a plan. We have a plan locally that can start moving our people in a very effective and efficient way. We need to move forward with that plan. And the reason that we have not moved forward with it in totality is that we haven't funded it. It's going to require dedicated funding to do this, and if this is one of the most important problems we're having in our city, then it is a problem that should be dealt with, even funded. So first, what I will do as your mayor is to work to ramp our public transportation, MTA, up to its capacity, and to hopefully be able to move our people in a way that they can move effectively, on time, and trust the system. Then we'll look at a more regional plan afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Mr. Bone.
So this morning I walked 9/10 of a mile from my house to the closest bus stop. It took me 18 minutes. I waited 10 minutes for the number 5 coming from Bellevue, and then rode it into work 35 minutes, and then a 4-minute walk to my office. It was a pretty effective process, a pretty easy way to go. What it confirmed for me was, despite the fact that we'll have 10 million passenger rides this year, we're only at about 15% capacity. Our choice rider of our overall ridership is only 32%, those actually choosing to ride the bus. And we also know that 85% of those riding the bus are walking to the bus stop like I did this morning. While we can all agree that regional transit and having a high volume, high capacity system that impacts the entire region is incredibly important, I think we also have to do all we can to make the current system as dependable and as efficient as possible, and to understand that that also begins with how people get to the bus. I used 4 streets, a quiet neighborhood street, 2 cut-throughs on a highway, and there wasn't a sidewalk in anywhere in that 9/10 of a mile, and that's a big part of this.
Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. I wasn't a supporter of the AMP, wasn't a fan of the AMP. I've described the AMP as a solution in search of a problem to solve. I think what we all agree on is that we have a regional traffic problem. The traffic between Murfreesboro and Nashville, Franklin and Nashville, Lebanon and Nashville. It's a regional traffic problem. We need a regional mass transit solution. I've said that we're 10 years behind in getting started on the regional mass transit system. It'll probably take us 8 to 10 years to complete it, so we're 20 years behind before we get started. I will start day one working on a regional mass transit solution, getting all of the bedroom communities to Nashville around the table, and begin that process and start working on solving that problem. We're going to have help from the courthouse to the White House and everybody in between. It's a massive undertaking, but we're late and we need to get started today.
All right, thank you. And last but certainly not least in this process, important question, couldn't be any more important, Ms. Rebrovick.
Yes, as a lifelong Nashvilleian, I used to tell everybody it takes you 10 minutes to get anywhere around Nashville. Well, you can't say that anymore. No. This is one of the most important initiatives that I will focus on as your next mayor. And in fact, I've already gotten started on it. It is so important. I've written a 13-page policy paper that you can see on my website, lindafornashville.com, and it talks about things we can do right now in the short term to impact the traffic congestion that we have in the Davidson County area. It is about technology and sensors to make traffic move smarter. It is about making sure that we get information in our smartphones to make better decisions every day about where we're going. It's about a midterm solution that is multimodal. It's about making sure that we have improved mass transit. And then from a long-term perspective, it's about a regional plan that involves the mayor's caucus, that involves funding very innovative ways that we're going to fund transportation across our region. It means we start now, and to that end, I've committed to 120 days after I'm in office. You will have a plan in your hands on how we're going to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. And when I said last but not least, I meant end of the table, not end of the line. Megan Berry gets the final bite at this apple, and it is a big one because it impacts every single resident of Davidson County.
Yes, it does. And you know, when I ran in 2007, transit wasn't even part of the conversation. Now it's a critical part of the conversation. And one of the things I hear the most is that transit is multimodal. This is about our sidewalks, our bike lanes, our greenways, our busways, and our roads. So the first day in office, what I'm going to do is to consolidate all of that into the mayor's office. I want all of those pieces to talk to each other. We are behind our peer cities. They are much further along than we are, and we have to catch up. And that means going aggressively after federal funding. Whether you were for or against the AMP, the one thing that it did bring were federal dollars to Nashville. We need to be much more aggressive about going after those federal dollars, and as your next mayor, I will do that.
Thank you. While we're talking transportation, do any of the candidates wish to use their chip in rebuttal for this topic? All right.
We're all in agreement. We have to do something, right? Okay, question number 3 tonight. Mayor Carl Dean has been very pro-education and pro-charter schools, as you know. Do you think Nashville needs more charter schools, and how will you address the funding friction between charter schools and our regular public schools? Let's start now with Mr. Fox.
Thanks, Stacy. That's one of the more important questions facing our city. I'm pro-successful public schools. And I don't care who's providing it. It doesn't matter to me if it's the MNPS that's doing it or if it's a nonprofit charter organization. We just need very good schools immediately. And what we really need is a mayor who applies the same urgency to other people's children that he or she does to his own. And that's really what I want to see. When I was chairman of the school board, I saw that the school board and the whole system is much more effective when the mayor is engaged. And as someone who spent many, many years in it, I'm eager to apply that same sort of urgency. The school board's sometimes effective, sometimes it's not. But as mayor, I'm eager to be a very collaborative partner, sometimes maybe a critical friend, to try to expedite things, move things along, because I think within the next 10 years, Nashville could be the best educated city in the South. Between what we're doing in K through 12, targeted pre-K, what Governor Haslam's doing, I'm very optimistic, and charter schools play an important role in that.
Mr. Gentry.
You know, one problem that we have is the discussion around charter schools and public schools. Charter schools are public schools. The fact is, what's most important are the young kids that are being educated by our schools. And the discussion around charter opposed to public has taken us away from what is most important, and that is the people that we serve, and those are the students. We have good teachers. We have good schools. We have the ability to educate everyone in those schools. But the challenges are not going to be solved by a charter or by any other program. They're going to be solved by an effort around the students and the families and the communities where these students live. Over 70% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. We've got to start understanding that, and that is a problem. And so it's not about the schools as much as it is about making sure that their lives get better. If their lives get better, they do better in school.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Mr. Bone.
One of the frustrating things to me is I believe we've allowed the charter school conversation to hijack the education debate and dialogue in this city. And while I look at the charter schools, if our position as mayor is we want higher performing schools faster and that is our expectation, I certainly cannot ignore the results of charter schools. However, that's 7% of our children. What do we do about the other 75,000 children who do not attend a charter school, 60,000 of which qualify for free and reduced lunch, 45,000 of which do not read or score at grade level, 15,000 of which don't speak English as their first language? With all due respect, we're not going to get there talking about just charter schools. We're focusing on one piece of the solution. As mayor, I will help us move beyond that conversation and beyond whether we have too many charter schools or not enough, and to focus on the totality of a child and the totality of our entire student population.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Mr. Freeman?
What I like to say is that we've got about 8% of our students in charter schools and 92% in traditional public education, and we're spending 92% of our time talking about charters. So I agree with that concept. We've got to figure out, how do we improve our traditional public education? Is it through more funding? Is it better training? What do we need to do? But we've got a number of teachers in our community that are doing a fantastic job, a number of schools that are some of the best schools in the Southeast, and we don't talk about those. We talk about the failures, not the successes. We're doing a lot of things right. There's a reason the President of the United States came to Nashville and spoke at a public school, reason the First Lady came to Nashville and spoke at a public school. We've got a lot to brag about. We've got a lot of work to do as well, but we're doing a lot of things right, and we ought to talk about that as well.
All right, thank you for your input tonight, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Rebrovick.
The question needs to be, how do we give every single child an excellent education wherever they want it to be in our city, in their neighborhood, in any school that we offer? I am a product of the Nashville Public Schools, and I am a mom who has twins that are learned totally differently. And we have done 4 things that I want to point out that I think are very important to getting to that goal. One is we have to empower the principals to run their schools. We make them accountable through the performance framework. They need to make decisions so that they can help their teachers and get the best teachers. We need to give parents choice, because they need to send their children to the best schools. We need to make sure that we help our children from cradle to career, because the job for education is to get them into secondary school and into a career. And lastly, I will bring technology to the schools to make sure that they learn everything possible that they can.
Thank you so much. And now Ms. Berry.
Charter schools educate some of our children, but traditional public schools educate most of our children. But our conversation seems to focus on the small part of that. As your next mayor, I will elevate this conversation, because what every child needs is a great teacher in their classroom. And what every principal needs is the autonomy to do what he or she needs for the children in her school. And I firmly believe that in order for our children to be college and career ready, they have to be kindergarten ready. So I am the only one on this stage who started off very early in this campaign saying that we need universal pre-K. I will fully fund universal pre-K so that our children, when they enter kindergarten, they'll be able to graduate from high school and be career ready and college ready.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Jeremy Kane?
When we talk about what we can do for kids and how we can elevate this conversation and how we can push it forward, I've already done that. And as a public school, a charter school founder, and someone who grew 5 charter schools, one just across the street here at Cameron Middle School, we've actually partnered with the district, and we saw what it took. And in the mayor's office, that's the experience that I will bring, that education can be optimistic. We can, as a city, believe that every child can get a great education at the school of their choice. It can be collaborative, where we can open up our schools to community organizations and organizations of faith that come in and provide those essential services. We can give that flexibility to principals, and we can hold all of our teachers to high standards so that all of our students learn. We've already done this here in Nashville, and we can continue to do it because we need a mayor that will partner with the new superintendent to make education truly the most optimistic, collaborative, and ultimately successful thing we do as a city.
All right, would any of our candidates like to rebut anything that your opponents have said? Ms. Rebrovick.
Well, I would like to add that one of the most important things going on in our city right now that encourages me that we will give every child an excellent education is the Nashville Public Education Foundation's program called Reset. This is a program that is going to elevate the discussion, and it is so important that all of us, everyone in the community, from the Nashville Public Schools to not-for-profits to everybody, needs to get involved in this kind of a program where we work together to raise the level of our schools and elevate the discussion. Thank you.
Any other rebuttals? Ms. Berry?
Well, I certainly believe that we have many bright spots in our schools. I don't think that the next mayor needs to be a cheerleader. She needs to be the quarterback. And she needs to be taking the team down the field so that all of our children can be successful. As your next mayor, I will certainly be cheering on our teachers, but what I will be doing is leading the team down the field.
So far, we've touched on public safety. We've talked about mass transit. And you knew this was coming. We're going to talk about housing. Housing pricing right now is driving some people out of the Nashville market, including some people who were born and raised here. What will you do as mayor to create more affordable housing? And we begin with Mr. Gentry.
Well, you know, creating more affordable housing is a solution. It is not the solution. But what I will do with affordable housing is make sure that we are funding programs such as the Barnes Fund at a high level where it can be helpful, that we are collaborating with other organizations and nonprofits within government and outside to be able to push down the price of housing, the price of building housing, so that people can afford it. But we also need to do our part to ensure that we are providing the opportunities for people to be employed, to receive education, to be trained as skilled laborers, and to be trained and to be able to take some of these good paying jobs that we have in our city so that they can afford housing. So it's not just about providing a bunch of affordable housing, it's about getting people ready to be able to afford the housing that's here.
Mr. Bone.
The experts tell us that we need 10,000 more units than we have today that are affordable. The issue with that is that goes between 30% of the area median income to 120%, which means that impacts those that make $20,000 a year on one end of the scale, or $10 an hour, to those who make $75,000 a year, or $37.50 an hour. Those are different products. $400 a month for an apartment versus $1,600 a month for an apartment or a house are totally different products. I want to ensure that obviously we build those 10,000 units over the next 4 to 5 years, but we need to build the right types of units in the right places and keep them affordable. We got to put more tools in the toolbox. Certainly encouraging MDHA to do their part, a stronger commitment to the Barnes Housing Trust to help our nonprofit developers, incentivizing for-profit developers, but also helping those who are in their house stay in their house. Our biggest opportunity as a city is not to bring out-of-state developers here to do this, but to incentivize our small businesses and minority business to do this type of work.
Mr. Bone, thank you. Mr. Freeman.
I've been in the housing business for almost 40 years. I know something about affordable housing. My company was the National Property Management Company of the Year. I know who can build these affordable housing units from around the country. I know what we need to build. I know where we need to put them, what areas. I don't want them all in one area. I want them scattered all over the entire county. I've outlined a very specific plan on our website for 10,000 affordable housing units, 2,500 units a year. That's a very achievable goal. And I've actually talked about 20,000 housing units in the second term for a total of 30,000 affordable housing units in Davidson County. I promise you that will make a dent in the affordable housing shortage. It'll help solve the problem. We can always do more, but a plan to develop 30,000 affordable housing units is a great first step.
Mr. Freeman, thank you. Ms. Rebrovick.
Everyone deserves to have a home where they're safe and their families can live. I will work tirelessly to bring innovation to make that happen. Let's start with some ideas of how we create scale through density. We can bring co-housing to Nashville. We can bring micro units and micro villages to Nashville. We can actually find opportunities that will give us the ability to put many, many homes in one small area. The second thing is I will be a force behind MDHA and their new rental assistance demonstration program. I will support that and help in any way I can, because this is how we can scale a huge amount of quantity of affordable houses. The other thing I will do is I will take an inventory immediately of where Metro has vacant land or land that could be used for affordable housing. All of these are the kind of things that we can do right now to help make an impact and allow everybody to have a home. Thank you.
Ms. Berry.
Housing is a complex issue, and it's going to take a multifaceted approach in order to solve our housing problems. We need to build more housing, and we can do that through the Barnes Housing Trust Fund, but we also have to retain the housing that we have. So when we have developers who speculate on property and come in and spruce them up and jack up the rent, that's a problem as well. We recently had a public hearing where a woman talked specifically about her challenges in finding housing. One of the pieces that struck me the most was that she was able to talk about how she had started in one home, and due to some personal circumstances, she'd had to downsize to a condo. But she'd been able to stay in her neighborhood with her children so they could go to the same church and the same school. And when she got back on her feet, she was able to buy a house that was smaller. Having affordable housing of all types in our neighborhoods is critical. And as your next mayor, I'll make sure that happens.
Ms. Berry, thank you. Mr. Kane.
I think it's critical as we talk about this issue and as your mayor to never forget about the people that this affects, and those stories are critical. When I think about the families that lead, that I remember getting the phone call after they'd been kicked out of their house and their apartment just behind Meharry in the cold of winter, or having the conversations with my parents right now, about 10 years ahead of schedule when we thought we'd talk about it. Affordability is a real challenge here in Nashville, and so is the housing piece of it. So take those two separately here. When we talk about affordable housing, transportation is critical to this. Accessibility to those houses and apartments right now is critical. If you don't have to have a car, that puts more money in your pockets. We need variety with our neighborhoods and the options that you have there. And we also need abundance. We need more housing to be built. 98% occupancy right now with our apartments. We can do that through the Barnes Fund. I have a plan to use parking garage fees to fund that consistently year over year. We also need those public-private partnerships as well.
Thank you. Mr. Fox.
One of the great things of running for office is all the tremendously interesting conversations you can have. A couple months ago, I had a conversation with a new friend from Los Angeles who grew up in L.A. in the 1960s, who said, you might not remember this, but in the 1960s, everybody from all over the world was moving to Los Angeles, new restaurants, cosmopolitan city, great economy. It was the it city at that time. And the first indication there was a problem was a sudden problem in affordable housing. So if we're going to focus on issues of growth, and that's what I recommend that we do, because growth has a chance at this point to actually consume what makes Nashville special in the first place, we're going to have to take this issue of affordable housing very seriously. There are some very straightforward things we can do, but in LA, their challenge was their nonprofits and their people didn't play nicely together. We have a tradition of our nonprofits working together very collaboratively. So between rental assistance demonstration program, giving incentives, not mandates, but incentives for developers for lower workforce housing, that would be a good thing. Adding some more capital to the Barnes Fund would also help.
Thank you. Now, two candidates have already used their rebuttal chip. Any of the other candidates wish to use their rebuttal chip here? Mr. Freeman, let's begin with you.
Thank you. The beauty of what I'm talking about in solving this affordable housing problem is we're letting the private sector solve it. The Barnes Housing Fund is a great, noble idea. I think we've added 22 housing units or some number in that range to date. We can get thousands of units online and developed using the private sector. That's the magic in my plan, using the private sector to develop these housing units.
Mr. Bone?
The reality is the private sector has yet to do this, and certainly I think all of us agree that we have to make a major commitment to affordable housing in this city. But if we're going to do that, with all due respect, I'm not sure I want to incentivize a developer from Dallas or Atlanta or Chicago. I want to incentivize those who are doing that work already today, and to work with our local groups, work with our local contractors, our local small businesses, and our local minority businesses to ensure that we get that double bottom line. We get the housing units that we want, as well as incentivizing those local businesses.
Mr. Kane. I'm sorry. Another candidate, Mr. Gentry, go ahead.
And as we talk about affordable housing, we need to look at the reality is, and the reality is that many of us don't want affordable housing and the people that live in them in our communities. And as long as we don't integrate our communities with affordable housing and the people who live in it, then we're always going to have depressed areas. So as we build the houses, we also have to build the people so they can become the type of people that can maintain themselves. And I hate to have to say it, but it's just the truth.
Mr. Kane.
I think it's right to say that it's not just going to be the private sector, it's not just going to be government that can solve this. That's why we need a mayor that has that experience of partnering with organizations. I go back to my experience. We were not supposed to partner with the district, but we did. We made it happen. We can bring folks to the table. That partnership is critical. That's why I came out and talked about using incentives in a creative way, where Bridgestone, for example, if employees lived downtown, we could give them more incentives. It takes cars off the road. It keeps people living downtown and creates more housing where we need it.
Thank you.
Okay, on to question 5 now. Reclaiming Nashville's riverfront has been a focus of the current administration. We have a new family park down there, an amphitheater coming online. It's certainly coming along now. Some would say it's been an underutilized aesthetic resource for many, many years. Some suggest it's time to find a new home for PSC Metals that's there on the East Bank. We had a big fire there recently, and that's a common occurrence. Do you share that view, and would you go so far as to use eminent domain to acquire that property that many consider an eyesore? Let's start now on this end with Mrs. Rebrovick.
I want to echo that comment that our river is one of our crown jewels in our city, and I'm so excited about having our Cumberland River and the growth that we're seeing around it. My approach would be to make the property so valuable all around our Cumberland River, to make it so valuable that an individual that might own that property would find an opportunity to sell it. Everyone at some point in time will find an opportunity to make a business decision, and so my approach would be to work in a collaborative manner with the developers, with the community, with the neighbors, and make sure that we continue to make all the property around that river very valuable.
Mr. Freeman.
I think is this on? Thank you.
It is, yes, thank you.
The question is, would I use eminent domain?
Yes.
And I have said time and time again, yes, I would. That facility is not a friend of downtown Nashville. It's not a friend of the neighborhood. We need to relocate it. It needs to move. That's what eminent domain was designed for. We'll have to properly compensate them for the cost of that facility. We'll have to pay them a fair price for it. But we need them out of that downtown neighborhood. It is restricting the development of adjoining properties. It's creating terrible traffic problems of junk trucks driving through the area, redevelopment area, to sell the junk metals. It's just an eyesore, and I have said that I would be in favor of using eminent domain to get PSC to a new location.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Bone?
Yeah, I mean, certainly our riverfront and the ability to further activate our riverfront is an opportunity that few cities have like Nashville. Obviously, the PSC Metals site is extremely complicated. It's something that we've looked at going back 2 decades. Certainly, I think we always have to keep the leverage and the possibility of eminent domain on the table. But even with the power of eminent domain, we still have to agree on a price. We still have to move them, and we still have to clean up the site. All of that will be enormously complicated, but I think that we keep that a viable option. We keep eminent domain as a possibility on the table, but obviously there are other needs in this city in addition to just activating our riverfront when we look at our infrastructure needs. It's not just capital projects, it's the fact that we have almost $4.6 billion worth of infrastructure needs across the city, whether that's new schools and equipping classrooms, whether that's new and repairing roads and bridges, or whether it is repairing our water lines that are cracking and failing. We have to put all that on the table as a priority, and that would be a higher priority for me than PSC Metals.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gentry.
PSC Metals is an eyesore, but we have communities around the city that are eyesores too. And it would not be a priority for me. I would like to see it moved. I would like to see it gone away, but I would not make it a priority above communities that need to have attention to them, both financially and otherwise, and so it would not be my priority. And eminent domain, I've used it as a council member. I've seen it used. It works in a lot of situations, but in that particular situation, you might get the property cheaply, but it's going to be a huge cost to clean that property up and to get it moved. The cost and the resources that we would put into cleaning that area up could provide that affordable housing that we're looking for, could provide safe communities that we need, and I would put my attention there and my priorities there first.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Mr. Fox.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't really like eminent domain. I really don't think that's how we do business in Nashville. Kind of Nashville to me is about treating people well and kindly, not using the force of law to strip them of their private property. We have eminent domain rules for a reason, and when it's absolutely essential for something that's vital for Nashville, then yes, as mayor, I could see the need to do it. I too am eager to see the riverfront redeveloped. We're probably 20 years behind Chattanooga in redeveloping our riverfront. So I think we have room to go, but there are things we can do in the marketplace. You know, simply rezoning the property will cause the value of the property to go up tremendously. The rent on that property is tied to the market value. So my expectation, if we do a rezoning, the market will take care of the situation in a much more free sort of way. I'm just not a big fan of eminent domain.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox and Mr. Kane.
My priority would be just over the highway in Casey Homes. And if you think about it, there's 1,700 folks living there right now. And we have a plan on the table as a city. And this is one of the keys of my agenda as mayor. And one of the reasons I'm running is if we get that development right and that revitalization right, that ties folks back into East Nashville. It gives folks a place that you and I would want to live at. It ties them into transportation, into our schools there, and Martha O'Brien and our nonprofits. And ultimately, if we do that the right way, we send a message that this is the way Nashville is going to treat all of its citizens, not just the ones that can go to LP Field or go downtown, but folks that live within sight of downtown. And if we do that right, we send a message that we're going to do Edge Hill right and Napier Homes right. And through that process, we can create such economic pressure that PSC metals at that point does come on the table. And at that point, eminent domain would be on the table, but it would not be a priority. Serving our families first would be my priority.
And finally, Ms. Berry.
Our riverfront is amazing, and it has been a pleasure over the last 7.5 years to see how much we've been able to make it much more of a priority for Nashville. But when we talk about PCS metals, it's complicated. And I think that we need to remember that with eminent domain, there's a price that gets paid. Recently, I heard that the owners are interested in selling it to us for $1 billion. That seems pretty high to me. Now, when we get into eminent domain and when we come in and try to take property, then we end up having to pay a market price. I have no idea if that is actually worth $1 billion, but I know in my administration, we would have a long conversation before we would spend $1 billion on that site. I think we need to focus on other parts of our city that are just in need of revitalization, and that's what I'll do as your next mayor.
Do we have any rebuttals? Okay, we will be right back after this short break.
All right, we're back on live. Glad to have you with us. Running out of time, 15 seconds to answer the last question. In recent years, Metro has built a new convention center, new ballpark downtown for the Sounds. What new capital project would you propose as mayor? And Mr. Freeman, you get the first bite.
I think we've had enough major projects for a while. I think we need to probably focus on our neighborhoods rather than downtown, and focus on smaller projects, infrastructure projects, rather than huge projects.
Great. Mr. Bone.
I think this looks like infrastructure and looks like infrastructure all over the city. We know the infrastructure needs in Madison look a lot different than the ones in Bellevue. Antioch looks different than Donaldson. So it's roads, it's bridges, it's schools, it's classrooms, it's water and sewer lines, and it's broadband internet.
Thank you. Mr. Gentry.
Sewers, stormwater, streets.
Quick.
Sidewalks.
Mr. Fox.
To maintain our quality of life, we're going to have to shore up our infrastructure. And water and sewer is where I would start that.
Thank you. Mr. Kane.
I'll finish off Howard's list. It was mine, and add schools there. I think the plan, how do we transition our schools not just to school space, but community space, the green space out front, to parks that all of our families can enjoy, and give our kids a great place to go to school in every single neighborhood.
Ms. Berry.
Capital improvements mean spending capital on infrastructure, and that means our schools, our sidewalks, our roads, our bike lanes, our greenways, and anything else that's going to get you onto something else.
And Ms. Rebrovick.
Yes, transportation, education, infrastructure, quality of life. I want to make sure that those investments are going to reduce the cost of our government and give us money to put into those topics. And that means we build a smarter Nashville by being more efficient.
You guys are fast. Now, I only have to ask David Fox this. Do you wish to use your chip right here?
All right. We want to make sure that you get your closing statement in full, so let's get started with that. Each candidate is guaranteed 90 seconds for this closing remark. You will also have your rebuttal time. This only applies to Mr. Fox if you have not used it already. Okay, let's start now with Mr. Bone.
I want a mayor who has deep roots in this community. As a seventh-generation Middle Tennessean, I'm amazed by the momentum of this city, but like you, am concerned about how we maintain our authenticity, how we promote not just growth, but smart growth. Our status as a great city today is not guaranteed tomorrow. I want a mayor who's experienced and knowledgeable. Having served for 5 years as general counsel to the Music City Center, I know firsthand that the business of metro government is a highly complex $1.9 billion business that doesn't just run itself. I want a mayor who has a vision for the entire city. Having grown up near Gouldsville, having gone to school in Madison for 12 years, having met my wife there who's from Donaldson, having lived in downtown in Green Hills and Tusculum and West Nashville, I know that we need a vision for this city that says we pursue an education system that says every child matters. We pursue an economic development strategy that says every family matters. And we pursue a transit and an infrastructure plan that says every community matters. I want a mayor that understands that being mayor of Nashville is a great job, but it comes with an enormous responsibility to ensure that we keep our momentum going, but we're responsible enough now to begin to diversify its prosperity. I believe that with your help, I can be that mayor. I am Charles Robert Bone, and I'd be honored to have your vote.
Mrs. Rebrovick.
Nashville's in a great place. And as your next mayor, I will make sure that our city continues to grow and that we overcome the challenges that we face. Since the beginning of my campaign, I have been talking about building a smarter Nashville as my vision. And what this means is we're going to bring business discipline and innovation to make sure our government runs efficiently and effectively. It's not just about technology, although we will combine technology and bold new ideas to make sure Nashville's livable for all of our families. You know, Nashville's a big city now. Our FY16 operating budget is actually pushing $2 billion. We have over 20,000 employees. You know, I've been honored because I have been in the 3 of the largest technology companies in the world where I worked my way up to being a senior executive. I have been on boards, public and private, where I've been responsible for policy and oversight for tens of thousands of employees. I've made global and national decisions. I am battle-tested and ready to be the mayor that will make the bold decisions that we need to make sure that Nashville continues to grow, that it's a city that continues to work, and that it's a city that's livable for all of our families. I'm Linda Eskind Rebrovick, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Kane.
Over a decade ago, I met a group of kids in North Nashville who changed my life. And I was tutoring there, and I saw kids who were not lucky enough to get the kind of education I was lucky enough to get. And I came home one day, and my wife let me mortgage our house to start Lead Academy to change those odds, because I'd seen Nashville at our best when my family had one of its worst moments after my father lost its job. And I knew we as a city could do better for our kids and those families. And today, 93 students are sitting in a college classroom somewhere in America because of the work that we did. I believe in Nashville at our best. I believe that we can make education the most optimistic, collaborative, and successful thing we do. I believe that we don't just have to grow economically, but we can grow as a community. And most importantly, I believe that it is time that we give purpose to our prosperity. But to do that, we need a mayor who has the energy to match yours, who has the creativity to match the innovation of an incredible city that produces the music that moves our world. And most importantly, has a mayor who is humble to go and reach out to folks who are smarter than them and our seniors who have made Nashville the place that we love. I believe I am that mayor and have that energy, that innovation, that creativity, and most importantly, that humility. And I'm asking not just for your vote, I'm asking for you to partner with me so on August 7th, we can start creating that Nashville truly at our best.
Mr. Gentry.
We've talked about a lot today. We've talked about transportation. We've talked about schools. We've talked about the riverfront. We've talked about infrastructure. And all of this is important to our city.
And it's important that we have a mayor that has the experience to be able to hit the ground running as soon as he goes into office. I'm that person. I was your vice mayor. I'm your criminal court clerk. I have had experience in this city in the business sector, in the nonprofit sector. I've had experience in every area that we talk about today. But I'm also experienced enough to know that there's something we haven't been talking about. That's in everybody's polls, that's on everybody's mind, and that's the violent crime that's taking place in this city right now. And I am going to be your mayor that is going to attack that violent crime situation in a way that it never has. Gun violence is increasing in our city. People are being killed every day, young people. Rape is increasing in our city, domestic violence and murder. The mayor's done a great job to start the effort around domestic violence, but these other violent crimes are really a problem in our city and potentially could hurt the health and the growth of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to be the mayor that's going to start meeting Saturday with organizations within the community to work to reduce violent crimes, and I'm going to be the mayor for your future. Thank you.
Ms. Berry.
24 years ago, I came to Nashville to get my degree, but I got so much more. I fell in love with my husband, we've raised our son here, and I started my professional life here. I first got involved in my neighborhood, and that's how I started my community service. I wasn't wealthy, and I wasn't politically connected. I just wanted my neighborhood to be better. There are a lot of candidates on this stage, and we're starting to be asked, how are you different? So let me tell you how I'm different. I'm the only one on this stage who has partnered with Mayor Dean to help lift our economy out of a recession. As a Metro Council member, I have stood up for tough fights that Nashvillians care about. I have stood up for fair wages, non-discrimination, and keeping guns out of our city parks. But this is not about what I've done, but what I'm going to continue to do. I believe that education is essential and that every child, regardless of their zip code, deserves a high-quality education. I believe that a city that thrives is a city that moves, and we have to keep moving. And I believe that we need to invest in all parts of our county, and our neighborhoods have to stay affordable for our families. As your next mayor, I will make you this promise. I will lead us into our bright future, and we won't leave anyone behind. My name is Megan Berry, and I would be honored to have your support.
Okay, and Mr. Freeman.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of you being here and sitting through this. We're all asked this question, why do you want to run for mayor? Why do you want to be mayor? What are you going to do? And for me, the answer is simple. I want to give something back to the city and the community that has given me so much. I was born in Donaldson, Tennessee, lived a few blocks away from all of my aunts and uncles and grandparents' home. Wonderful place to grow up, it still is. I want that experience for everyone in our city. I also have some unique ideas on mass transit, on affordable housing, on education that aren't shared by any other candidate. So I think I'm uniquely qualified to be mayor. I'd like to give 4 years back to my hometown that has given me so much. I have no aspirations for any other political office. It's the last office that I'll ever run for. And I want to give something back to my hometown. That's why I'm running. I ask for your support. I'm Bill Freeman, and I'd like to be your next mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, and finally, for closing remarks, Mr. Fox.
I've had the good fortune of living in Nashville for close to 50 years. We moved here when I was 4 years old, just a few days after my mother suddenly passed away. We moved back to Nashville to be with family. And ever since then, I've been the recipient of so many awesome things here in Nashville. One thing I remember as a Boy Scout, where they always taught us, leave your campsite cleaner than you found it. Well, as adults serving on the Metro School Board and now running for mayor, I'm attempting to see if we can give back to the city itself and see if we can leave Nashville better than we found it. To that end, there are 4 initiatives I'm really focused on. First is, after so many exciting projects downtown, I think it's time to turn back to the neighborhoods and give them some TLC. Secondly, we've built up a lot of debt building up the downtown, and most of us understand there's a connection between debt and spending and the risk of higher taxes. Third, with so many people moving to Nashville from across the world, and we're lucky to have them, we must urgently shore up our transit infrastructure so we can protect our quality of life. And finally, crime is affecting way too many lives in Nashville. There are way too many people committing violent crimes who are not off the streets for nearly long enough time. If we're in agreement on most of these issues, then I'm the right candidate for you. If we're not in quite agreement, well, I'd still love to have a conversation with you. Please call me on my cell phone at 615-828-1193. I'd love to have the conversation. I'd be very grateful for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of you for your very thoughtful discussion tonight and for participating in this Fox 17 Mayoral Candidate Forum.
Glad to have had you with us, and quickly in the time we have left, we want to encourage all of our voters to get out there, register to vote. Your voice is important, that you be heard. I've long believed that we as a people here in Middle Tennessee generally get it right if enough of us go to the polls. That's why this conversation was so important, and thank you again for being with us.
Absolutely. The election is August 6th.
Congratulations to you all, and really quickly to all of our viewers, we hope that you candidates will join us, and all of you viewers at home and the people here to watch us on Fox 17 News at 9 and 10. We'll see you then.
Nicely done. All right.